I'm going to take it back to the beginning.
Okay.
Not just for Submersed, but for you. So tell me, what got you into music? What started your love for the craft, and what were your first musical aspirations?
Yeah. Done quite a few interviews. This first time I got in that one, so it's one of those questions you have to think about for a second. It's like, where do you begin? I think I was born with a fascination for music. From the stories that I was told, I think my first music class was like at 4 or 5. I have some faint memories of basically it's kind of one of those toddler music classes, where you go in there and you bang around on a little xylophone, or you're just basically kind of learning rhythms, some pre-K type of stuff. And I really feel like that's where it started. But as I got a little older from there, I used to follow my grandmother around everywhere. She picked me up from kindergarten in the afternoons, and then I would go and sing with her in church, just kind of hanging out in the choir loft back there. And that was really kind of the first environment that I found myself in that was, I guess for lack of a better way, it was kind of centered around music. Music is a big part of fellowship and worship. And so it really kind of got my wheels spinning. And, as I got a little older, I took the piano lessons, kind of like everybody does when you're younger. It almost at first seems like punishment, and you're kind of like, man, this is so challenging and difficult. And I really kind of fell off. And even now, at this stage, I kind of kick myself in the butt a little bit. Like, man, I wish I would have just, stuck with piano a little longer. But, but again, just kind of planting seeds, and then, I went through some of my early, childhood and was just a fan of music. I wasn't so much playing it, but I was a fan of it. And then, probably right around 6th grade, I think was like the first year that, we had like band, in school, and kind of like me, or kind of like everybody else, I wanted to play drums, and so I went and tried out for drums, and, there's only a handful of kids that get that privilege, so that's really kind of what started my journey as far as being an instrumentalist. And then, when I got to high school, it was when I got stuck in choir. I wanted to do art as a freshman, and that year it ended up becoming a senior elective course. And so I showed up the first day of school and got my schedule, and I was in band and choir. And I hadn't even signed up for choir, but I was like, what's going on? I thought it was kind of weird. Had 2 music classes, which was pretty cool. But and then that year I found out I kind of had a voice, and I kind of moved more away from being an instrumentalist and more as a singer. And then, Alice in Chains released Dirt, and Pearl Jam released 10, and Soundgarden released Super Unknown, and Live released Throwing Copper, and all these albums came out at the same time. And there were these frontmen that just, I don't know, man, they just, I mean, even to this day, they still just kind of grip you, and I didn't know what the hell they were singing about. It was all going over my head, but I could feel the passion, and I could feel the honesty. And I really gravitated to that. And then my mom, took me to a live concert when I was about 15 or so. Mm-hmm. And that was on that Throwing Copper tour. And just watching Ed kind of do his thing, he's one of the most dynamic frontmen, or was at the time. And that's where that was the, I can still remember to this day, that was where I remember sitting out there watching him do his thing. And I was like, that's, I think that's probably what I want to do. I could get passionate about that. And that's when the first cover band started, and, started playing the school dances and that kind of stuff, back when we still used to do that. And, and that's kind of what, started it all,
So did you, you were doing your first bands still in high school?
Yeah, I was, I just started driving maybe, somewhere around there. 'Cause I remember being able to drive myself to practice, and some of the trouble I'd get into, with that. But, yeah, I was in high school. So yeah, that first group was a group of high school kids, and then, probably by the time I was a junior or senior, I was getting all the older kids, you know, kind of inviting me to kind of come and be a part of their band and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of where we kind of went from there. But yeah, I was still in high school. So
it's the way to do it.
Yeah.
When did things kind of start taking a more serious turn, like where you knew, okay, like this could actually really be a thing?
Yeah. You know, I think, you know, during those years, there was always a lot of accolade, you know, as far as, you know, again, I was recognizing that there was vocally, I had a talent that was maybe not normal, you know, that had something special to it. And there was always a lot of reinforcement there. But, you know, right after high school, I went into the U.S. Army. You know, it was literally, I graduated one week and the next week I was flying out for basic, you know. And so at that point in time, everything, my future was kind of up in the air, you know. And so I really kind of dedicated myself to that. And then when I got out of the Army, and I was just trying to figure out, you know, what the hell I wanted to do with my life. And then even from that sense, like how I was going to be able to utilize my military experience in the civilian world. You know, I didn't know how that was going to work. And so, you know, I probably spent the first year or two, you know, when I got out of the military, just really not knowing what I was going to do. And honestly, got really far away from even the dream of music, you know, even though that's probably what I should have just stuck with the whole time. I was on a journey, and that's when, you know, Seth Luker, who was a friend of mine, who's the older brother of Kellen Luker, who's the bass player in Submersed. We reconnected, you know, up in DFW area, and he had gotten involved with, you know, managing some local bands and that kind of stuff. Kind of just started getting his own taste of just kind of what that world's about a little bit. You know, Drowning Pool had just got signed out of Dallas, and so there was a lot of attention on the area and the scene. And you know, he just kind of was like, "Hey, man, I remember you used to sing, you know, and I used to be really good at it. And have you ever thought about getting back into it, you know?" And he really kind of encouraged me to find some guys and get a little group going. And that's kind of, you know, was the beginning of Submersed. And once we started demoing and playing shows, everything happened really fast.
Right.
And it was happening in almost kind of a divine manner, you know. And at that moment in time, it was, you know, kind of going back to your question, you know, that was really the moment where I was like, hey, I'm going to put my heart and soul into, you know, making a career out of this. And maybe I can do this for my life, you know. And that's really where it began. So that was, you know, 2000 or so.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't get the first album out till what, 04?
Yeah. We got signed, you know, in the summer of 2002. Mm-hmm. And then, it took a couple of years to really kind of put everything together. You know, we went in and recorded a whole original version of the record with Scott Phillips and Kurt Kelsey, like early on. And, you know, You Run was going to be the lead single. And we kind of put it all together. And then I can't remember exactly what year that was. You know, it might have been 2003-ish or somewhere around there. It wasn't too far in, but at that point in time, the label just didn't feel comfortable with, you know, what we had. I guess, you know, right before the release, they just kind of started. That was my first ego test, I guess you could say. You know, like you put so much of your heart and soul into it that whenever somebody wants to pull everything back, it's kind of soul crushing in a lot of ways, you know. Yeah. And you start to second guess yourself a little bit. But they pulled everything back, and that gave us a little time to basically get back in the room again. And then, you know, when that happened, you know, Hollow came out, To Peace came out, In Due Time came out. You know, these songs came out that we were like, oh, wait a minute, you know, something's kind of happening. And, you know, even to the point where it was like, man, you know, we have to learn how to trust other people's vision too, you know, because I wasn't seeing that happening. And again, you know, even when I'm saying they come out of my mouth, I'm kind of like, you didn't know what the hell you were doing, you know? So I was even just arrogant enough to think that I had, you know, to take offense, you know, or something. So, man, you know, how grateful that was to actually step back and be able to discover that music. And so at that point in time, the label was like, well, see, I told you, so let's go record that. And that's when we went out to LA and worked with Don Gilmore. And then just working with him was a whole nother eye-opening experience of just what it takes to really get something right. And so we were able to take those two sessions and smash that together. And that's what became In Due Time. So even though it took us a couple of years, 2 or 3 years to kind of, get everything put together for that initial release, we almost kind of went through the process 2 or 3 times before, we got it out there. So yeah, that was a little wild.
Now, during those times, you ended up on some soundtracks and whatnot. How did that come about? Was that something that was like brought to your attention, or was it just like, oh, hey, this is what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty awesome if you get the opportunity to say, hey, we want you to be a part of the soundtrack. Here's the storyline, or here's the scene, and that's always kind of been my dream, was to, write music specifically for a movie. But usually in those type of situations, what happens is, and I know especially for Wind Up, this was big for Wind Up, is the movie production company will task a label out with putting together a music compilation, for the movie.
Yeah.
And then from there, they will insert songs that they feel like fit, certain aspects of the art. And so in those particular situations, Wind Up was responsible for putting together those soundtracks. And so ideally what they would do is, kind of, they would have their flagship bands that would kind of carry the soundtrack, and then that would give them the room to promote some of their up and coming acts, and so basically what they would do is use some of your B-sides or maybe some of the demos that weren't going to be utilized on the album. And so that's what makes some of those soundtrack songs unique, is that they kind of stand on their own. Those were songs that didn't really fit on the record, but they worked great for that movie, so in that sense, I thought it was great because we're able to get more of our art out there and make more of a connection. And then secondly, it was just really cool. I had always just dreamed of having our CD on the shelf in one aspect, but then also to be able to like be a part of a movie, or a soundtrack or an ending credits, it's just another aspect of kind of feeling like, you made it somewhat, and for a band like us, it was just always kind of like right under the cusp of breaking through. Those are kind of like our big moments, so it meant a lot. It was really cool.
Something I miss nowadays is soundtracks and really good compilations. Yeah, the 90s and the 2000s for sure. Like badass soundtracks, man. Like so many.
Oh, dude, like, yeah, the Crow soundtrack, that was like a big spinner for me. I mean, and again, those were like songs you weren't going to find anywhere else, especially from like Pantera or, that Rage track that's on there is probably the coolest Tom Morello solo I've ever heard him do, because it's so different from Tom Morello. It's you can actually hear the notes and stuff, so yeah, that soundtrack, the Lost Highway soundtrack, was just wow. Some of my favorite Nine Inch Nails songs on there, some of the Rammstein stuff. I mean, it's really, really cool. So I'm kind of in the same boat. We that was a little bit of a golden age there as far as the soundtracks go.
That's what sucks too, is like the convenience of streaming and stuff. It's great, yeah, but like there's something that's lost about something like that, where like, okay, yeah, you could go buy the albums and stuff, but hey, have you heard this song?
Yeah, yeah.
Here's from a compilation, a soundtrack, whatever, or even like a little CD single. It's like it's only on this. You'll never hear this song anywhere else, and those days are gone, man. Like,
yeah, I remember being able to go to the music store when they had like the 10-disc CD changer in there, and you could preview your CD, and then you could always buy the single disc.
Yep.
And the tradition back then used to be is they would always have to do like an extra song on that B-side that wasn't listed anywhere on that single. And then I know even for Europe, like whenever you would release a song in Europe, we always had to release a track in Europe that wasn't released here, And so if you could get the European single, it would always come with a song on it that wasn't in America, and I always thought that was really cool too. So
absolutely. It makes for some good collections, especially
Hey,
nowadays.
man, if you live long enough, you start looking back, and you start saying, man, I really missed that or missed this. And, that's some of the growing pains, even, the debate between streaming and, just a full awesome live record, even the access to the artist,
Yeah.
even stuff like this. It's just, there used to be a level of imagination and kind of mystique
Right.
to things. We're kind of lost on that now. Like, we feel like we're kind of entitled to access. And, back in the day, it's just, you had to go looking for stuff to find it,
Yep,
so.
for sure. So what happened between the first album and the second album?
So band wise, just kind of band wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that kind of really had a huge impact on the band was just our interactions with Eric, E-Rock. That was the biggest change between the first record and the second record was, not having his presence there on the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously a one of a kind type of player, and he has that impact no matter who he's playing with, even playing with Mark Tremonti, E-Rock has the ability to elevate whatever he's a part of. And I think being a little young and being a little more egoic, kind of caught up in that, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the confidence of yourself that you're not willing to acknowledge your confidence or appreciation for the things that other people bring to the table, just how important that is. So I think in our mind, we felt like, we could do it with them or without them type of thing, and so, that process of putting together the material for that second album was missing a big piece of what made In Due Time great, and that was Eric's playing. And that's, something that, we could either live with regret on, or we can just take for what it is and try to move forward and learn from that. And that's really what we've tried to do. But yeah, that to me, that was the biggest part of that was that separation with Eric. And then, a little more being able to have a little more hindsight is what I'm looking for. Being able to have a little more hindsight after that. We had some really good mentors on that first record, whether it's Don Gilmore, whether it's Kurt Kelsey on the production end, or just Mark, just having Mark in our corner. He was never a do this type of guy.
Yep.
He was just always there trying to elevate our confidence. He had the ability to make you believe in yourself in a manner that produced results. And I think that's what a great mentor does. They don't try to dictate who you are or try to tell you who to be. They put you in a position to be successful. And Mark was great at that. And we didn't have that second time around, going into that second record, we were being influenced by the label a lot. We had certain forces at work there that, were impacting the finished product. And to be honest, I look back at, and I don't want to talk crap about it, 'cause I know there's so many people out there that it's, it all holds a special place in their heart, but, man, I was just still trying to figure out how to write a song, and it's still trying to figure out like what I wanted to say and how to say it. And, I just wasn't very good at truly speaking my heart, lyrically. And, being able to really just keep growing over the years and look back and doing other things since then. I think that was one of the biggest impacts on that record was, it sounds like we're grasping at straws in a lot of ways, and some of it worked and some of it didn't. And I guess that's just really a part of the process, and we always kind of wore our heart on our sleeve, so for some people it really connected, others it didn't. But in the end, it still has stood the test of time. So,
For sure.
still happy with it, so.
How did the relationship with Mark come about?
Well, interesting. I mean, that's a crazy story in itself. When we first started, Submersed in the Metroplex, it was during the days of the early bulletin boards.
Mm-hmm.
The websites were even, kind of new as far as multimedia websites where you could, play songs or get merch, all that stuff. It wasn't really formulated that way yet. And so when we did that first little demo before we even got signed, it was only a 3-song demo that we did with the producer named Eric Delegard, who still produces music at a place called Real Time Studios in Denton, Texas. We went in and did an original 3-song demo that had You Run, Unconcerned, and Deny Me on it, and the original versions of those. And we had this small group of fans that were on this bulletin board. I mean, we're talking about maybe 20, 30. And one of them happened to be this kid named Josh Franklin, who ended up being in a band called Faction that was signed to Roadrunner. And that was kind of like my cousin was the bass player, and Josh ended up being the guitar player. And I kind of knew all the guys beforehand. And but anyways, this was before all that. And so Josh was a local fan, and he lived up in, I think, the Plano area or something. And so we kind of did this funny thing where any of our early fans, we would drive a copy of our demo to their house, and we would show up with the demo, and we would give them the demo, and then we would play for them in their living room. And so we went out there to Josh and we delivered his demo, and we sat there and we played some songs acoustic for him in his living room. And he's like, I actually have a connection with Mark Tremonti, and he kind of knew people who knew people. And so he took that demo and he passed it along, and it just kind of went through his hands, and it ended up in Mark's hands. And it caught his attention, and then we went to South by Southwest, and it caught some attention. And then we got invited down to the Florida Music Festival, and that's what really connected us with Mark. We went down there to do some more showcasing, rub some more elbows with the label people. Totally out of our element, had no idea what the hell we were doing. And it just so happened that when we were down there at the FMF, getting ready to meet Mark for the first time, that one of our original guitar players just got completely wasted out of his mind one night, blew up, and just quit the band. He just flat out quit. It was kind of like one of those, like to see you do without me, good luck, and just left, like literally left half the group in Florida and just started driving back to Texas, and I'm sitting there at like 2:00 in the morning trying to do inventory count in my head. Like, okay, so we have guitars, like kind of seeing, what the next step is. And that next morning we were supposed to meet Mark, and we basically kind of, hey, how you doing? Cool. Do you know any guitar players? Type of thing. And E-Rock was like his little brother. They had met a few years earlier, and that was like his protege. And he was like, man, dude, I've got the perfect guy for this. And Eric had heard our music, and so it was probably 2 or 3 days later we flew Eric out to Florida, and it all kind of took off from there. So
badass.
Yeah, it was all by chance. And I mean, that I remember walking to the house that day, and Mark had just gotten back from Key West with his family because his mom had just passed away from cancer. And that's right when he was started writing In Loving Memory, was right around that time. And I remember just hearing him writing that song around the kitchen table. And it was just, you just knew it was special.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about the years where not a whole lot was going on, band-wise.
So after second album,
yeah.
So after we, after everything kind of, we did that second record, and Better Think Again came out. Actually did really well. Did better than I thought it was. And really, singles they'll do about as good as you push them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you push it for 12 months or so, it'll stick around long enough to break through. And the label just never really pushed us all the way. They would kind of take it to a certain point and then just stop promoting. And after Better Think Again, we were supposed to follow up with Price of Fame, which I still think I thought it would just explode. I thought that song was just ripe and ready, especially. Like I think Lips of an Angel by Hinder was really big. Just having those ballads, those bigger rock ballads was starting to come back. And ironically, that was one of the one of the reasons why the label said they pulled the song was that it was just too 80s rock ballad. And I was just like, I was like, I just don't even know what's happening right now. It was also almost like intentional, you know.
Yeah.
They wanted to fail in a lot of ways. And so at that point, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. It was really hard for me to get serious after that. And, you know, Kellen was tired.
Right.
And he had started his journey of faith at that time. So it was really hard for him to be out on the road with a bunch of drunks and, you know, all this partying going on when he's, you know, just kind of coming into the Holy Spirit, you know. And so he was at a different place. You know, TJ, the other guitar player, was like, man, you know, I just didn't sign up for this, you know, and I was just not fun to be around. You know, I don't think I've ever been like a nightmare. You know, I've heard a lot of really, really bad lead singer stories, but I also was not a leader. So at that point, everything was just kind of sour. And, you know, Kellen and TJ went their separate ways. And, you know, me and Garrett, the original drummer, were kind of had some choices to make, but it just didn't seem right trying to just fill holes and, you know, keep going from there. At that moment in time, it just didn't seem like it made a lot of sense. Plus the label had already, I just didn't trust them at all, you know? So that whole relationship was pretty fractured. And so at that point we just all went our separate ways, you know, and tried a few different things, but it's just, you know, whenever it's right, whenever that spark is there, it's so different from anything else, you know, that it's just really hard to find it again. You know, it just is. And so nothing really clicked from then on out. And so, you know, you go through that point in your life where you have to deal with regret and you have to deal with, you know, the repercussions of bad choices, you know, and, you know, so for many, many years, I dealt with the depression of that. You know, I dealt with the you know, the alcoholism that fueled. I've always been a happy drunk, so I didn't think I was an alcoholic for a long, long time, you know, but you start to have families, you have children, and really, you know, they get to a certain age where the example you set becomes very, very evident and very important. So, you know, you start to make changes, you start to work on yourself, you start to become more honest with your culpability in some of the regrets and the problems that you have in life. And so, you know, that allowed me to look back and start to have some tough conversations with myself, and then, you know, slowly reconnect with some of these guys and, you know, either heal our wounds and then go ahead and move on, or, you know, heal our wounds and discover a new desire to try again. And that's kind of what happened with me and Kellen, you know.
Yeah.
You know, Garrett was able to really move along and find himself musically as a drummer. Now he's probably in the best situation he could ever ask for, you know, being with Wolfie and being able to develop a strong bond with him. Cause I know those two guys really need each other, you know, and I'm very happy that they both have each other. You know, because they both lost their parents, you know, to cancer and to illness, and they can really relate. And I think that's important. And the same thing for Eric. You know, Eric's always been a very loving, jovial spirit. You know, he has the talent and he has the personality that anybody would want, you know, in their project or in their situation. And so he's always had great opportunities. And so maybe that hasn't really afforded those two the same ability to kind of look back and go through some of that process. But for me and Kellen, it did. And whenever we were able to really reconnect, which really happened after his brother Seth passed away from cancer back in 2018, I think it was, that really forced a lot of things to the surface. And some of the stuff just didn't seem as important as it used to. It became very petty, and in a lot of ways, a lot easier to let go of, you know, because just life's too short. And when you have something special like that, it really has nothing to do with you. You know, you're more of the conduit to what's happening. And so at that point in time, it really became important to Kellen and I to respect the foundations that we had laid, and that music, even though we were trying to find our way and we hadn't perfected our craft, something happened,
Right.
and something came through, that had a purpose and that still has a purpose today.
Mm-hmm.
And so it became much easier for us to take ourselves out of the equation and say, we need to be good servants to this music. We need to be good servants to the listeners and to the music fans out there that truly get something from this art that we created. And so, that's kind of a long answer that, a lot happened, and a lot that was absolutely essential and necessary happened. And, here we are, we're here with, man, I tell you, I don't know if you've really been able to dig into the lyrics on the new stuff. But I'm so very proud, just from a songwriter, to be able to find myself where I'm at now lyrically, to be able to write songs that truly tell our story, because Broken Love, boy, that's real, and like Grand Illusion Army is kind of a little more from like that, almost the I Empire days where it was kind of about that, government state of the world type of deal. But, Broken Love's extremely personal. Proof is extremely personal, like the truth is extreme. I mean, the art is showing up, which kind of gets lost a little bit because it's just so different from everything else.
Yeah.
That's the most honest song I've ever written, so yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm just proud of us for being able to, again, put the past behind us, put some of these shortcomings aside, grow beyond that. And then, find a new voice with a fan base that never left. We're so grateful.
I have a big fondness for that era, the late '90s and early 2000s. There was a lot of bands, the alternative rock bands and the new metal and all that stuff, that they only put out one or two albums and then just kind of disappeared. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of good ones out there. And I've had your guys' album for I don't even know how long, 15, 20 years. And
Yeah.
when I saw that you were active again, and I saw that you had the new EP and that you had social media and all that, I was like, hell yeah. I was like, like I'm glad that they're active again. I always thought that for whatever reason, you kind of flew under the radar for whatever reason that was, and it didn't make a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
I always thought that Submersed deserved a lot more, but I'm also thankful that you existed at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's, we came along at a very interesting time in the music industry. And yeah, so there were big plans, and a lot of those plans, honestly, they centered around Creed, and it makes sense, because our big brother was in Creed, and ironically, Creed fell apart right at the same time, and so all those plans kind of went out the window, and I really feel like, the label had gone all in on that, and when that fell through, they didn't really know what to do, and I think so they just kind of gave up in a lot of ways, and it's unfortunate, but listen, God has a greater plan, and sometimes you have to get really far away from that to really be able to see it, and so yeah, I can hash over some of the details every day and try to figure out why, or I can just take it as it is and just keep going from there. So yeah, it's just glad we have it. Glad it's there.
Well, listen, I got one last question for you.
All right.
For everyone that has supported you all along the way, from before, while it was happening, while it wasn't happening, up to now,
Yeah.
what do you say to them?
I mean, thank you is the first thing that comes to mind. We went through a process with this new release where there was a lot of feedback on that initial, release last, fall. And a lot of that was just due to the lack of funding, and the ability to really, match what we had already had there, professionally, production wise. And so I just, I thank everybody for their patience, for one, and their ability to kind of go through the journey with us. You know what I'm saying? And then also just to be so accepting with the fact that, a few of the guys aren't with us right now, and sometimes that's hard to deal with. And it's something that we had to come to terms with, because I want to be romantic about it and all that kind of stuff. But then again, it's, the music and the purpose behind it is bigger than any one individual, and so we just want to be able to, lift up that purpose and just be, again, just faithful servants to that. So just to have a fan base that, number one, is still here, number two, is so supportive no matter what happens, and then number three, just the understanding, that, sometimes things take time. It's still a prayer of mine daily that, we have a chance to heal with E-Rock and to reconnect with him, and that, we can all kind of have a little musical therapy together, and share that with the world so that they can, take part in that and be witnesses that, listen, we can all have issues. We can all overcome that. We can grow, we can learn, and we can become even better because of it, And so, I just want everybody out there to understand how important they are. Number one, to the fact that we're here again, because this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for a sense of responsibility that we have to be here for y'all. So as much as everybody is here for us, and we appreciate that, everything that we do is so that we can be here for everybody else. I understand what it's like to be regretful, to struggle with addiction, to deal with depression on a daily basis. There's a lot of stuff that's coming at all of us from a lot of angles, and music is a huge mechanism to help us relate, to help us to affirm. Sometimes we hear that song and it's not like it's going to save our life, but it affirms what we're feeling. Right. It allows us to connect and to say, hey, wow, I'm not the only person. And this is somebody I look up to, or somebody that, I gravitate towards. And wow, they're kind of experience. Yeah, just grateful that anybody even wants to listen to us. So,
well, I hope that we get more new music, and I hope that you're able to reconnect.
Yeah, me too.
And I want to thank you. And I appreciate
thank
your
you.
time.
Yeah, you too, Marcus. I appreciate it.
And I hope to see you guys live sometime. I never got to see you back in the day. So,
yeah. Hey, man, listen, it's everything kind of seems like it's like an impossibility right now in a lot of ways, to be honest with you. But just being here now doing what we're doing seemed impossible, so I feel like that with a little more time and just an open heart, that there's no telling what can happen. I do know that, there's a certain level of standard or expectation we have with playing live, that we really need it to be all there to do it, and so, whether it's bringing in the right players that we feel comfortable with, or, waiting until we're all on the same page to where we can come back together and truly commune on stage. That would be ideal, for a majority of that original lineup to be able to reconnect and share that reunion with everybody. I think, we're probably even willing to be patient enough to wait until that happens, but with the new music, that's the whole thing. And there were some people that, with this release, we're talking about, this doesn't sound like Submersed, that, and I'm just like, man, you need to go back and listen to the first two records, because we're all over the place, like that was a conscious effort for us. We never wanted anybody to say we're this kind of band or that kind of band. We always wanted to be able to write whatever song came out of us, and sometimes it's a little more alternative, sometimes it's a little more top 40, or a little metalish, we have some metal influence, you never know. But I thought with this little batch of songs we did, I thought really covered the whole spectrum, of what we're about, which is really just heart and soul being translated into, sound form. So, but yeah, if we could just get everybody back together, I think it would be much easier to say, hey, let's go play some shows, and hey, listen, let's, the elephant in the room, Creed's back, baby, and they're
Right.
bigger than ever in a lot of ways, and we're sitting here watching all of our old friends get back together and go tour together, and I'm just kind of waiting for the call, so I would love to be able to get back in a room with E-Rock and just kind of do our thing, and just get these guys back together and go out there and just slam some shows would be awesome. But until then, I'm just going to keep singing, try to keep my voice in shape, keep working on the craft. Me and Kellen see each other each week at church. We're both playing in a worship band up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, we get to play for kids every day, and we'll see what happens. So,
one little side note before I end it.
Yeah.
It's about Mark. It's funny. He's got 3 bands going on.
Yeah.
And he goes from being the guitarist of Creed to Alter Bridge, and then his solo thing, right?
Yeah.
Dude's voice is ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's got he's got Scott, he's got Miles, but meanwhile he's holding that voice back all these years, and it's like, why weren't you singing?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is he had some secondary lead parts on, like, My Own Prison and stuff like that, and that was always kind of there. He is the most driven, hardest working person I've ever been around. I don't think you can even top that. Like, he's like the Mount Everest, the pinnacle of drive and fortitude. But I remember, when we were working on the first Submersed record, that's when he got a vocal teacher. We had the same vocal coach, and he really got serious about developing his voice. And it's just got more serious as time has gone on. So he kind of had some foresight in that long before the solo project, that, he wanted to start working on his voice to be able to carry some vocal. And I really, honestly, now that I think back about it, I almost think like he may have been contemplating doing that for Alter Bridge, and then as he was kind of doing it, he decided, I think I really need to, again, have a strong vocalist. And me and him demoed the whole first Alter Bridge record. I was the singer at that point in time. And we went to the label and we talked to the label about me doing both bands. And the label was like, we're not going to let that happen. And so that's when we took those demos and started sending them out to singers. And that's how we found Miles. I say we, but that's how he found Miles. But yeah, it's, I still keep in touch with them. We communicate. And when I heard this last record, because you can even hear on the Tremonti records how it gets better and better. And I heard a couple of falsetto notes in this new record. And, that's my thing, and so I just hit him up and I was like, bro, I think I heard a couple of falsettos in there, and I was like, I'm just really, really proud of how far his voice has come along. And again, just the hardest worker you could ever know. So yeah, you can hear the fruits of his labor,
Sure.
It's pretty awesome.
It is. Again, to the fruits of your labor.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, sir. I'm gonna let you go.
Yeah. But, have a good one. Let me know whenever you get it all edited up, and we'll share it and promote it and all that good stuff.
Oh, it should. Realistically, I mean, I could have it up by tonight for sure. So.
Okay. All right. Well, let me know. I'll be here.
All right, dude.
All right, brother. Have a good day.
Thank you, man.